Now that we've played Reg H for a little bit, I wanted to talk about what Pokemon I think are good in the meta with a tier list. Tier lists are just kind of fun, and I enjoy making them, so I'm going to keep doing them for a while. So we're just going to start. Venusaur is like an A tier. Just really good sleep Powdermon, pretty bulky, good damage. I personally think Charizard is an S in this format. It's not meta defining, but it is so good that you have to respect it, especially on the Marco Fierro Sun team. Blastoise is honestly not that good. It's like an E at best, but not every Pokemon can be. Arbok is absolute just garbage. I think in the current format, I think Pikachu is slightly better, just like a D tier. Alolan Raichu is an F. I also think Raichu itself is a D. Both Sandslashes are just almost worthless. Clefairy and Clefable, in my opinion, are probably A plus. Just super good redirection Pokemon, and are really hard to deal with. Regular Ninetales is absolutely useless. Alolan Ninetales, though, I think is an S. The ability to set up Roarvel and just spam Blizzard and Moonblast just does so much into so many teams right now, especially with all the Dragonite running around. You force a Terra, or just you can pressure so much other stuff out of the game. Wigglytuff is unusable. Jumpluff and Blossom are both absolutely worthless. Quite a few Pokemon are just not that good in the format, but that's kind of the nature of what we're in right now. Alolan Persian, I think, like is a B plus. No, probably a B. Where it's a really good fake out Pokemon with Parting Shot and is really bulky and hard to get rid of. The main issue it has is it just kind of does what Incineroar wants to do, but worse. But it gets some better supporting moves than Incineroar gets. Berserker's kind of funny, where with Steely Spirit it can do a lot of damage and it can boost Golden Go, but you are having to run like two Steel types in a format where Charizard is good. Golduck is unusable. Annihilate, I personally think is an A plus. It has the bulk up set where you can hit it, or even the Final Gambit set that's both good. Arcanine is honestly I put it in like a similar vein to where I put Alolan Persian, where it's just really bulky, has Snarl, but it has Intimidate. I think Hisuian Arcanine is better. Just the fact it can be offensive, and there's so much rock weakness in the format that it can really just do insane things. Poliwrath is cool, but not very useful. Politoed is the second best rain setter in a format where weather dominates. But rain is probably the best weather condition in the format. And Politoed having access to Perish Song allows it to kind of perform like a unique role where it can kind of work on a Perish Trap Rain hybrid, which is a pretty fun team. Golem is worth. I think a Alolan Golem's kind of funny. The really strong electric stab is kind of funny with explosion, but that's just about it. Slowbro is like an okay trick room setter that can do some stuff. I like Shell Sidearm on Galarian Slowbro. It's not very good, but both Slowkings they're not worth using. The next Pokemon I think is good is Alolan Muck, and the Power of Alchemy set with Moody and all that is a lot of fun, but I don't think is viable at any kind of real degree. But the Gluttony set I do think is good, but it would take the right team. So it's probably a D tier, where I think if you could get it set up, it would do a lot, but unless that happens, it's not very good. Cloyster is almost unusable, just like Hypno. Regular Electrode is just kind of outshined by Hisuian Electrode, but Hisuian Electrode is only good on teams where you want a fast Bullet Seed to just be obnoxious into your opponent. Alolan Executor is kind of cool. Where, we saw the team with, Hisuian Zoroark, where it was like a Trick Room and then like Sun hybrid team, where Electrode would just be like a fast expanding force Pokemon. The uh, Alolan Executor, it can do it can do pretty well on Trick Room, but the Dragon type makes it, in my opinion, worse than regular Executor, just because of how many dragons are in the format. Gengar, Gengar's kind of awkward to me. Where right now in the format, I think it's unusable. But I do think there's some merit that it could be up here. I just think it has so many weaknesses available that I don't really see why. Hitmonlee has one set, the Unburden set. It's kind of fun. Hitmontop it's in a place where it's like the 5th or 6th best Intimidate Pokemon, but it does get Fake Out and just like good fighting stab, so it's decent into Incineroar, and it gets Wide Guard, so it has some stuff, but just not very, like, it's not the best at anything. Regular Wheezing, I'm going to put here. I think right now it is just strictly worse than Galarian Wheezing. And I think Galarian Wheezing is, an absolutely insane Pokemon right now. Kingdra is a really good Rain Sweeper, and I honestly think it's A tier. The Terra Stellar set with Muddy Water, Draco Meteor, Protect, and like Weather Ball, it can just do so much. And I put it in a similar vein to where I would put Venusaur, where I think the two of them are just really, really good. Uh, Sadly, Sizzler just kind of dies. Nothing. It's not really hitting anything. Nothing's really weak to its stab right now. And it does not do well. The stuff that is weak to the stab is too bulky, and with Incineroar, it's kind of Cleavor is fun, but I think just kind of like barely misses the mark of where it needs to be. So I think it's kind of like a D tier. The two that are like really important to me are Electabuzz and Magmar. In my opinion, they are both S tier Pokemon. Where I honestly think no, they're both S. Electabuzz is better than Magmar, so maybe Magmar drops down to A plus. But they are like meta defining, in my opinion. Um, both of the Tauroses are like really good. I think they're kind of power crept slightly, but I think they're in like the same range as like Hitmontop. Gyarados is a one I'm kind of on the fence about. I think it's B plus. Thunderwave's just insane. Most of the Jolteon, well, evolutions are just unplayable. Where they really just don't keep up in the format. There's only two I think are okay. And it's Espeon and Sylveon. I think Sylveon is like a C, and I think Espeon is like a D. Where Espeon's just this expanding force spot, and Sylveon's Sylveon. Porygon Z is, you can use it, but you're just, adaptability Terra Blast. Porygon 2, though, I think is the best Trick Room setter in the format. Snorlax is usable. It's just the belly drum set like it normally runs. You're just running Gluttony with belly drum, getting set up, and then just running away with the game because there's not much your opponent can do into it once it gets going. Dragonite is our first S plus. This is one of the most meta warping Pokemon in the format. It's just insane damage, so many sets, and you can't really stop it. I think Hisuian Typhlosion's in A tier, where it's just eruption from it just does so much. But you are having to double up on fire types. And it's weaker than Charizard, but it does a lot. Uh Azumarill is kind of weird. It's a belly drum Pokemon, but I think it's better than Snorlax because it gets priority. The jump left, I think, is like in the same vein as Venusaur, where it's just entirely team dependent. One of my friends was showing me a Sunflora team, and it's kind of cool. So Sunflora's not going in F, it's going in E, where Sunflora has some sauce, but it's too inconsistent to get it to do what you really want it to do. But if it if you do get it going, it is really impressive. Yanmega is just a speed boost Pokemon that does good damage, so it's like a B plus. It's really team dependent, but it works on the teams where you need it. Murkrow is like the third best Tailwind setter, but it does get Haze, which is really good in this format, so it's going in C. Farigiraf is good, but it's kind of fallen, where I would put it below uh, Oregon 2, so it's probably like an A plus. Maybe it's an A. Gligar can do some fun things with like Poison Heal, but I don't really think it's like super viable. Now we're on to three Pokemon I do think are all S plus. Sneasler, and both are Saluna forms. Sneasler is probably the most divisive Pokemon in the format, with Dire Claw, and the Ursalunas are just so much damage. I Mamoswine is kind of weird, where it has like two sets that it can run, but they're both really good right now just because of how prominent Dragonite is. So I think it's like a B tier Pokemon, where it just needs the right team. Some other Pokemon that are like Smeargle. Smeargle's weird, where it's like entirely format dependent, and I don't think it's like necessarily great right now. But I think it's like a D, or it's probably a C, where it gets so many moves, but it's kind of held back by just it being Smeargle. I think Tyranitar is an S tier Pokemon. Tyranitar is so slept on, but it has no bad matchups. Nothing feels unwinnable with it on your team, and it can just snowball and win games. It's not really gonna pick up any one hit KOs, but it wins by just just a battle of attrition where you just can't really wear it down. Blaziken, I think, is a B plus. Speed boost. If you throw a life orb on it, speed boost, Terra Ghost with protect and stuff, you can kind of start snowballing out of a game, and it just threatens so many Pokemon. Shiftry is a really good tailwind sweeper, but it's just kind of held back by the fact of like it normally just sets up tailwind, gets the attack boost, explodes, and I could see it working, but it's just slightly not good enough. Pelipper is another S tier Pokemon, where, like I said, rain is the best weather in the game, and it's Pelipper is also like it's offensive and has enough offensive stats in this format to where it can actually still do damage and not just feel like a dead slot. Um, Gardevoir is just an expanding force Pokemon normally. It has fairy moves, which makes it kind of fun, but I think it's just kind of like a faster, worse Hatterene. There's Gallade, though, I think is one of the best Trick Room partners right now. Where I think it's like a B plus, where it allows you to kind of bridge the gap, where it's fast enough that it can work in Tailwind, but slow enough where Trick Room will still work. And with sharpness, it does incredible damage. Slacking is you kind of need a Weezing on the team, but if you're already running Weezing, I don't see why Slacking would be a bad option. But because of its ability, it has to be in D tier. Sableye is really fun, but I don't know how good it is. Is in the legendary format, I think it was okay because it had some fairly positive matchups and could do like good damage with foul play in a Calyrex Ice. But in this format, it's just not really good enough at anything beyond just being a prankster Pokemon that I think there's just better of right now. Um, Volbeat or Illumise, I think, are funny because since it's lower power, not many things pick up a one-hit KO. And I do like that they get Tail Glow, and you can baton pass the Tail Glow boost, which is just really funny. And they have Prankster. Let's see. Ooh, Torkoal. Torkoal's definitely an S tier Pokemon, where I think all of the major weather setters are S tier by default. Weather is just so important in this metagame. And Sun is the second best, where it's just I don't really see how weather is going to fall out of popularity in this format unless something like majorly changes. Flygon is it's like an E tier where it's a Dragon Dance, sweeper. It's Dragon Ground, so it has a lot of coverage and it hits a lot of the format well, but it's just not statted well enough to really do what it needs to do. Milotic is definitely A. It's an insane Pokemon with competitive, and the amount of Intimidate we have in the format, it can pretty easily get to a +2 in its special attack and can just run away with games. Bayonet's an offensive, like a semi-offensive physical attacker, and it has a really good move pool, but it really just can't do much else. Salamence is, I think special attacking Salamence is really good, especially on rain teams, because of it gets Intimidate, and it's not really opening up very many weaknesses that the rain team already, it's not really overlapping many types besides with our Chaladon, and they don't share that many weaknesses considering. So I think it's like a B tier Pokemon. Metagross I think is kind of good, but it takes a very specific team to get it going. But it's a lot of fun and it's really good. Torterra got Shell Smash, so if you can redirect long enough, it can snowball with a game. Empoleon's there for the same reason as Milotic. Different resistances just because of the Steel typing, but it's a competitive Pokemon as well. Dusclops it's just not a good enough Trick Room setter right now. But if you're doing some policy shenanigans, it can be fun and can be viable to some degree. But I really don't think it's worth running in any kind of serious contention. But it's fun. Bastiodon is an Iron Defense Pokemon. So it kind of plays like a semi-Zamazenta, but it has really, really high defenses by default. I think Bronzong is drastically slept on. I personally put it B+, because it's in my opinion, it's one of the most reliable Trick Room setters in the format. But once it gets Trick Room up, it can kind of just feel like dead weight in the format. I think Garchomp's an A+ Pokemon. Pokemon is insane. It just does so well into so many teams. And it's good across almost the entire meta. I think almost all the Rotom forms are just unplayable except Rotom Wash, where I think it's like a D tier. Where Rotom Wash can still kind of do what it wants to do with the Will-O-Wisp and just general support. But it just falls slightly short most of the time. Superior is kind of strange, where it's still only one set that it wants to run, but it does the one set really well. Hisuian Samurott sets up spikes when it hits, which is fun, and I respect it. Excadrill is like a B. It's just a Sand Rush Pokemon, but it's probably the best one we have into the format. Conkeldurr is just a Guts Trick Room Sweeper, but it's hard to rationalize it when Ursaluna's there, but it has a positive matchup into Ursaluna. And Whimsicott. Whimsicott's the best Tailwind setter in the game. Tailwind, Encore, fairly offensive, fake tears if you're running Ursaluna with it. Super annoying Pokemon. Regular Lilligant's like a D, where it's not bad, but Hisuian Lilligant just does what it wants to do, but better. And it's only ever really saw in Torkoal super hard Trick Room teams. Basculegion Male is A+. It does so much, but it's just they all play really similar. And It's okay, but it's not really what you need most of the time, in my opinion. Crocodile's a fun, Intimidate Pokemon that does pretty good in Archaludon, but not with a rain team, so, it's fairly useless most of the time. Hisuian Zorark is better than regular Zorark because of the ghost typing, but I think it's a gimmick normally, so C. I think Gothitelle is kind of crazy, but it's really just a combination of its ability and like right team, so I think like B plus is a fair spot. Reuniclus is just an expanding force Pokemon that has some decent coverage, E tier. Amoonguss is meta defining and game warping. The Chandelure is the next one, and it's kind of a strange Pokemon where it in some matchups it feels like an auto win, and then in some it feels like a complete worthless spot. So for that I have to put it in C. But if you're playing into Sun teams, or you're like losing hard to Sun teams, Chandelure almost entirely walls out most of them, and it makes it a really fun option. The Min Xiao has kind of fallen a lot, but I still think it's really good. Yeah, I think it's like a D tier Pokemon. I think it's good, but it's really matchup dependent. And I think that makes it not very good. All three of the Kalos starters, to me, are an E tier, where they all can do something in the format, but they're not really excelling at anything. And it really saddens me because Chestnut in the last format actually had like a semi-niche, and it made it a lot of fun because it was like, okay, what is it doing? And you always kind of had to be like guessing because it could threaten so much between like wide guard and body press and just general annoyance. King Gambit in Reg H to me has fallen just because of Sneasler. So I think King Gambit's I think it's like a B, where there's definitely been formats like where you saw like Reg A and Reg B, for instance. When you saw King Gambit, your heart kind of left your soul left your body, and you were just like, oh no, here it is. But I think it's manageable in this format. Hydreigon is still good, but I think it's like a C tier at best, where you can make it work, but you have to invest like more than it's worth normally. Volcarona is A plus. Volcarona is really good. Talonflame's A, really good tailwind setter. It's the offensive tailwind setter, which I think gives it a lot of merit over something like Whimsicott, but you can end up in trouble with Talonflame just because you really want to run more than 4 moves normally. Pavillion's really good on a few teams, but it's super team dependent, so D tier. The Hisuian Gudra is a body press Pokemon, but it cannot be crit, so it's a fairly reliable one, and you have recovery on it. So it's a lot of fun. It can be fairly consistent, but you have to support it. Klefki gets some good coverage, like good status moves, and it's prankster, so E tier. The Incineroar is straight up an S. It's one of the Pokemon that completely redefined the format. Primarina is like a B plus, where it's good, but it's just so you know what it's gonna do, and you're really never losing to the Primarina. It helps in the matchup, but it does not pick up any of the big one-hit KOs. It's just kind of a consistent chip Pokemon. Rabambi's funny. It's just a fast offensive fairy. Well, semi-fast. Lycanroc is a B tier. It goes right up there with Excadrill because they're basically competing for the same slot, just kind of depending on what you need to hit. Araquanid's good, but super like team dependent. So I think it's like a D tier, where the team has to kind of revolve around it entirely. So that makes it kind of awkward whenever you're like trying to make a functioning team that actually feels good. So you're just having to spend so much effort into it, where it's like It's just slightly not good enough to, which is the really unfortunate part of it. Comfey, really good healing Pokemon, really obnoxious, B tier. Oranguru is a really fun Trick Room setter, but I tend to think of it as more of like a gimmick, so it's probably going in E. Mimikyu is good. I think it's underexplored in the format, and I think it could be good. Komodo is really good. I think it's a B+. I think it's just as good as Primarina. I think Rillaboom is an S. I don't think it's quite S+. I think it's beat out by the other two grass types, and the fact it has like that kind of makes it like tight to go on teams. And I think between Amoonguss and Whimsicott, they offer more to the team. Corviknight is an A Pokemon, where it's just a very bulky, steel flying type with, bulk up, Brave Bird, Roost. Really hard to get rid of, really annoying. Works really well with Garchomp and just has really good team synergy, and it's hard to remove. Hydrapple's funny. Fickle Beam's really good. It has a few good sets. E. Hatterene is the best expanding force Pokemon, in my opinion. Power's really good. Really hard to remove. And, expanding force, it can set up Trick Room, Magic Bounce to reflect Spore back. It makes it kind of hard to lead into it. Grimmsnarl's good, but I think it's worse in a format where Alolan Ninetales is good. Because Alolan Ninetales gets up both screens in one turn. As long as the, snow stays up. So to me, Grimmsnarl's like a B tier. Where it's like right there with Comfey, where it can still do what it wants. It's just kind of awkward. Alcremie gets Decorate, and Decorate's really funny if you can get like one of your Ursalunas decorated. So I personally put in E, where it's a gimmick, but it's at least like a semi-reliable gimmick in a way. Whereas Stonjourner gets Power Spot and Body Press. So I think it's like D, where it can do what it wants to sometimes. But it's just slightly... The fact it has no special defense tanks it. Both in DD forms are A tier. Where they are like the second... Female in DD is the second best Trick Room setter in the format, right behind Porygon 2. And male in DD is honestly the easiest to get going expanding force Pokemon. Since it sets up its own psychic terrain, you can just swap it in with Choice Scarf or something, trick onto your opponent if they have something you want to trick, and just start expanding, forcing, and running away with the game. Archaludon is an A+. Archaludon's really good, and it has so many sets, but I think it just barely misses out of S. Where to me, S is Pokemon that you see them, and you have to completely adapt your game plan around. Archaludon's not that. It's just really good in Rain or Power Herb. Dragapult's good, but I don't think it is. I think it's fallen to some degree. But it's still a super good Pokemon. Meowscarada is good. It's just, honestly, it just doesn't hit hard enough, and it's competing with Rillaboom for the grass typing, for an offensive grass type. Both of the other Paldean starters can do some stuff that's really cool, between like Torch Song, Skeledirge, and being hard to remove, and Aqua Step and Moxie and Quaquaval. But it's just, with a lot of these, they just don't do it quick enough. Is their game plans work, they just take so many turns to get going, that by the time you get it going, they're normally getting KO'd, where the game is just about to wrap up. Then we have Palmot. Palmot's really funny. You can run Revival Blessing on it, which I think most of them do, but it just gets Fake Out and close combat and stuff, and Double Shock. So it's really fun. Mousehold's really good redirection Pokemon with really high damage. Garganacl is good. I think it's like a B+ kind of good, where it's good, but it's just there's slightly too much damage. Cerulege is like a C, and I think Armarouge is a B, where Armarouge is expanding force, but kind of it can run either way, and you have to either prepare for it to be fast or slow. Cerulege is just kind of bulky and can just sit there. Kilowattrel's really fun next to ground types, because like they can Earthquake next to it, and it can Discharge next to them, so just really fun. Brambleghast is honestly kind of bad in this format. It's probably just gonna it's like top of F. Tinkaton is a Mold Breaker Pokemon with Fake Out, so it can actually fake out, you know, Dragonite that normally couldn't be if they were running Inner Focus. So I think it's E tier, where it's like you can use it and it's good, but it's like fishing for a matchup. I think Palafin is like an A tier, where Palafin just legendary stats, but kind of held back by the fact it has to swap out and back in. Now we're in like the last few, and I think these are kind of the ones where it's like, I think Houndstone is D. Between Fluffy and Last Respects, it can do a lot. Glamora is good, but just in the current format, it's just slightly not enough. But it's really, really good. So it's going in C. Flamigo gets scrappy so it can close combat Goldengo, and I think that alone kind of puts it in B plus to me. So Titan's Belly Drum with priority, so it's always going to be like fairly good. I think Dondozo is A plus. Dondozo is insane. This is a Pokemon that like I played it in the Global Challenge and went undefeated in the games I played. And Dondozo just it steamrolls just so many games where you just have to normally pick up one or two KOs and then Dozo in game, and there's not much your opponents can do. All of the Tatsugiri forms I kind of rank in the same place, where I personally think they're a D by themselves. Sinistcha is really good, but awkward because of like Matcha Gotcha and Trick Room and like Hospitality, so it's like by default good, but I think it's like not a good Trick Room setter normally. So I'm gonna put it in B plus. Excalibur's fallen a lot. I think it's C right now, but I could see it winning a tournament again. But it would take like a very specific team and like run. And then last but not least, Goldengo. I think Goldengo's S. I don't think it's quite S plus. I don't think it's like game warping normally. It is just like a super consistent Pokemon that's hard to deal with. But alright. This is my tier list. Let me know what you think. Disagree down below in the comments. I'm fairly confident in like my decisions on this one. And I'd not mention a lot of them, but there's just a lot of Pokemon in F that I just think are like unusable. Alright, let's see if I can get a good picture of it. Yeah, it's no better. Alright, I hope you all have a good day. Bye-bye.